There I was, sitting across from Eliza at Giovanni's, the candlelight dancing across her beautiful smile. 5 months into our relationship, and I still got butterflies. Then the front door swung open, and my stomach dropped. Jessica walked in arm, with Brad, the man she had left me for. 1 year since our divorce, yet seeing her still made my heart race. Not from love, but from memories of betrayal. Her eyes scanned the restaurant, then locked with mine. Her smile vanished instantly. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Also, if you have ever had an unexpected run-in with an ex, hit that like button and subscribe to hear the full story of how my ex-wife completely lost it when she realized I had finally moved on. I never thought I would be telling a story like this. My name is Sherman, and at 35 years old, I believed I had figured out the path to happiness. I worked as a software engineer at a growing tech company in Seattle, spent my weekends hiking the beautiful Pacific Northwest trails, and filled my evenings with books that transported me to different worlds. My friends described me as reliable, hardworking, perhaps a bit introverted, but always dependable. I believed in building a solid foundation before anything else, which is why I poured myself into my career first, making sure I could provide a stable future. 8 years ago, everything changed when I attended a technology conference downtown. I was presenting some new software my team had developed when I noticed her in the third row typing notes with intense focus. Jessica worked in marketing for a competing firm, and when she approached me after my presentation with intelligent questions about implementation strategies, I was immediately drawn to her. With her confident stride, sharp mind, and infectious laugh, Jessica was unlike anyone I had met before. We exchanged business cards, and what started as professional emails quickly evolved into coffee meetings, then dinner dates. Jessica was vibrant and spontaneous, pulling me out of my comfort zone in the best possible way. She introduced me to new restaurants, convinced me to try salsa dancing, and brought an energy to my life that I never knew I needed. Within 6 months, we were inseparable. Our relationship was filled with memorable milestones. I still remember our trip to Hawaii for our 1-year anniversary, where we swam with sea turtles and watched the sunset from a black sand beach. When we purchased our first home together, a modest 3-bedroom house with a backyard perfect for the future we were planning, I felt like everything was falling into place. The night I proposed to her at La Cantina, our favorite Italian restaurant with a ring I had spent months saving for Jessica, cried tears of joy while nodding yes. After 2 years of dating, we tied the knot in a small ceremony with only our closest friends and family. Those first 3 years of marriage were everything I had hoped for. We established routines that worked for both of us, hosted dinner parties for friends, and spent weekends exploring nearby towns or fixing up our home. We talked about having children, agreeing to wait until Jessica felt established enough in her career to take a pause. I always tried to be the husband she deserved, cooking her favorite meals when she worked late, surprising her with thoughtful gifts, and supporting her ambitions at every turn. The first signs that something was wrong came gradually. Jessica started coming home later and later from work, often smelling like wine, explaining that client meetings had run long. She began guarding her phone, turning it face down whenever I entered the room, and taking calls outside on the porch. The physical intimacy between us diminished, with Jessica often claiming exhaustion or stress. When I tried to talk about these changes, she dismissed my concerns, saying I was being paranoid or that her job was simply demanding more of her time. Determined to save what we had, I suggested a weekend getaway to the mountain cabin we had visited during our first year dating. Jessica reluctantly agreed, but spent most of the trip on her phone. I proposed couple activities like cooking classes or hiking groups, hoping to reconnect. Sometimes she would participate, but her mind always seemed elsewhere. Her criticisms became more frequent and targeted. My cooking was suddenly bland, my stories boring, my jokes embarrassing in front of friends. The woman who once looked at me with adoration now seemed to find fault in everything I did. Despite mounting evidence, I refused to believe what my gut was telling me. Jessica would not cheat. We had promised each other forever. There had to be another explanation for her distance. her secrecy, her growing resentment. I convinced myself it was a phase, a temporary rough patch that all marriages go through. But deep inside, a voice I tried to silence kept whispering that I was losing her not to stress or work pressure but to someone else. As weeks passed, my suspicions grew stronger. Jessica was constantly messaging someone late at night, her phone buzzing with notifications that made her smile in a way she no longer did with me. Several times I woke to find her side of the bed empty, only to discover her in the bathroom whispering into her phone. When confronted, she claimed it was work emergencies. But at 2 in the morning, these explanations rang increasingly hollow. My best friend Patrick noticed the change in me during our weekly basketball game. After missing shots I would normally make without thinking, I finally confided in him. Patrick listened without judgment, then asked the question I had been avoiding. Had I considered that Jessica might be having an affair? Though I defended her initially, his words stayed with me, forcing me to acknowledge what I had been trying to deny. The truth revealed itself in the most unexpected way. Jessica asked me to fix her laptop, which had been running slowly. As a software engineer, this was a simple task, and I was happy to help, hoping this small gesture might bridge the growing gap between us. While cleaning up her hard drive and removing unnecessary files, a notification popped up from her messaging app. I never intended to invade her privacy, but there it was, impossible to ignore a message from someone named Brad. Brad, miss you already. Same hotel tomorrow. We'll make excuse to leave conference early. My hands froze over the keyboard. I could have closed the window, pretended I never saw it. Instead, I clicked on the conversation, revealing months of exchanges between my wife and her coworker. The messages left no doubt about the nature of their relationship. Photos, plans for rendezvous, complaints about me, declarations of feelings that Jessica had once reserved for me alone. The pain was physical, like someone had punched through my chest and gripped my heart. But beneath the hurt, a strange calm emerged, the clarity of finally knowing the truth. Rather than confront Jessica immediately, I decided to confirm what the messages had already told me. I told Jessica I needed to attend a 3-day training seminar in Portland, a lie that tasted bitter on my tongue but seemed necessary. Instead of leaving town, I parked down the street from our house and waited. An hour after I supposedly left for Portland, Jessica emerged not in her usual work attire, but in a dress I had bought her for our anniversary. She got into her car and drove to the Westlake Hotel downtown. I followed at a distance, sick to my stomach but needing to see with my own eyes. In the hotel lobby, Jessica embraced a tall man with dark hair and a designer suit. Their kiss was not one of greeting, but of passion, comfortable intimacy that comes from practice. I recognized Brad from company photos on Jessica's social media. From my hidden spot behind a large decorative plant, I took several photos with my phone, evidence I hoped I would never need but knew I might. Then I watched as they took the elevator together, his hand possessively on her lower back in a way that made me want to scream. That night was the longest of my life. I sat in my car for hours, alternating between numbing disbelief and searing pain. Rain pounded the windshield, matching the tears that eventually came. I played our marriage back in my mind, like a movie, searching for the moment where everything went wrong, wondering if I could have prevented this somehow. By morning, I had made a decision. I would not yell or rage or beg. I would simply present the truth and let Jessica make her choice, though I already knew what it would be. When Jessica returned home the next evening, carrying the lie that she had worked late on a new campaign, I was waiting in the living room, her messages printed and arranged on the coffee table alongside the photos I had taken. Her face, when she saw them, cycled through shock, anger, and finally defiant guilt. I want to say I remained completely composed, but the truth is my voice shook as I asked the one question I needed answered: why? At first, Jessica tried to deny the obvious, claiming the messages were taken out of context, that Brad was just a friend. When I showed her the hotel photos, her strategy changed. She became defensive, then cruel. I was boring, she said. Predictable. Too absorbed in my work. Brad made her feel alive, desired, appreciated. They had not planned to fall in love, she insisted, as if that somehow lessened the betrayal. And yes, she loved him, had loved him for months, while sharing my bed and my name. I listened to every word, each one cutting deeper than the last. When she finished, I asked only if she wanted to try to save our marriage. Her laugh, short and harsh, gave me my answer before her words did. She wanted a divorce. She would be moving in with Brad, who apparently had been separated from his wife for months specifically to be with Jessica. The next few days passed in a blur. Jessica packed her things while I stayed with Patrick, unable to watch as she dismantled our life together. The divorce process was as painful as the betrayal. Despite being the one who had broken our vows, Jessica fought for half of everything, including the house we had bought with mostly my savings. Her lawyer painted me as emotionally distant, using my natural reserve against me, twisting my dedication to providing for us into neglect. The day the divorce was finalized marked the lowest point. I sat alone in what had once been our living room, now half empty, the spaces where her things had been serving as constant reminders of what I had lost. I had managed to keep the house, but at a significant financial cost. Friends tried to celebrate the end of the process, suggesting it was a new beginning, but I could not see past the ending. Depression settled over me like a heavy blanket. Sleep became elusive, and when it did come, dreams of Jessica haunted me. My appetite disappeared. Work, once my passion, became something I simply endured. I lost weight, my clothes hanging loose, prompting concerned glances from coworkers. Each day felt like moving through fog with no direction and no purpose. Social media became a form of self-torture. Though I had unfollowed Jessica, mutual friends unwittingly provided glimpses into her new life with Brad. Vacation photos, parties. Her smile, once my source of joy, now turned toward someone else. I told myself I did not care, but the twist of pain each time proved otherwise. 3 months after the divorce, on a rainy Tuesday evening that matched my mood, I found myself staring at our wedding portrait still hanging on the wall because I could not bring myself to take it down. In that moment, with rain lashing against the windows and silence filling the rooms that once rang with her laughter, something in me broke completely. I called Patrick, my voice unsteady, unable to articulate exactly what was wrong beyond everything. Patrick arrived within 30 minutes, took one look at me, and knew. Instead of platitudes, he spoke plainly. Jessica had made her choice, and it was not me. No amount of waiting or wishing would change that. My life was passing while I remained frozen in grief. His final question struck like lightning. Was I going to let the person who broke my heart control the rest of my life? That night marked a turning point. With Patrick watching, I finally took down the wedding portrait, allowing myself one last look before placing it in a box destined for storage. It was a small action, but it felt monumental. I was not okay, not yet, but for the first time I could imagine eventually being so. The next morning I forced myself to make changes, starting with my physical health. I joined a gym, working with a personal trainer who pushed me past the limitations I had set for myself. I cut my hair, updated my wardrobe with clothes that actually fit, and made an effort to eat regularly. These external changes might seem superficial, but they represented something deeper, taking control again. At work, I volunteered for a challenging project that required learning new skills. The long hours were no longer about escaping my empty house, but about rediscovering my passion for problem solving. My contributions earned me recognition, and eventually a promotion with a significant salary increase that helped ease the financial strain of the divorce settlement. Hardest but most necessary was rebuilding my social life. I had isolated myself during the marriage breakdown, embarrassed by my failure to keep Jessica happy. Now I reached out to old friends, accepted invitations I would have declined before, and even joined a local hiking group to meet new people. Each interaction was awkward at first, but gradually became easier. I learned to talk about the divorce without falling apart, to laugh again without feeling guilty. 6 months post-divorce, I scarcely recognized the man in the mirror. Physically stronger, professionally advancing, and with a slowly expanding circle of friends, I was building something new from the ashes of what had burned down. I still had moments of sadness, still sometimes reached across the bed for someone no longer there, but those moments became less frequent, less debilitating. It was during this period of reconstruction that I met Eliza. I had begun volunteering at a weekend literacy program for underprivileged children, partly to give back and partly to fill empty hours. Eliza was an elementary school teacher who coordinated the program. From our first interaction, her warmth and authenticity stood out. She smiled with her whole face, listened intently when children spoke, and approached problems with calm creativity. For weeks, we worked alongside each other without any hint of romance. I enjoyed her company, but had built walls so high, I could not imagine letting anyone pass them again. Eliza respected those boundaries, never pushing for more than the friendly rapport we established. Perhaps that was exactly why gradually I found myself looking forward to Saturdays more than any other day, specifically to the moments we would collaborate. When Eliza eventually suggested coffee after one session, my immediate instinct was to decline. The idea of opening myself to potential hurt again seemed foolish. But something in her genuine smile made me say yes, and that afternoon conversation stretched into dinner as we discovered shared interests in photography, historical fiction, and obscure documentaries. Unlike with Jessica, where I had often felt pressured to seem more exciting than I was with Eliza, I felt immediately accepted for exactly who I am. Still, I proceeded with caution. Our coffee date became weekly hikes, which became dinner at my house, where I cooked recipes I had been practicing alone. I told Eliza about Jessica early on, not wanting to hide my baggage. Instead of being scared away, she shared her own past relationship disappointments. There was no rush, no pressure, just two people slowly building trust. 3 months into dating, I realized something profound. I was happy. Not the manic roller coaster happiness I had sometimes felt with Jessica, but a steady, peaceful joy that came from being with someone who saw me clearly and valued what she saw. Eliza and I balanced each other, her outgoing nature, drawing me out of my shell while my thoughtfulness helped ground her occasional impulsivity. 5 months into our relationship, I felt ready to introduce Eliza to more aspects of my life. I made reservations at Giovanni's, a new Italian restaurant downtown that had received glowing reviews. The evening started perfectly. Eliza wore a simple blue dress that made her eyes sparkle, and the conversation flowed as easily as the wine. For the first time since the divorce, I felt completely present, not haunted by the past or anxious about the future. The universe, however, had one final test prepared. As our dessert arrived, the restaurant door opened and Jessica walked in with Brad. I recognized her instantly, my body tensing involuntarily. She looked good. I had to admit, in an expensive dress. I had never seen her hair styled differently than when we were together. Brad followed behind her, his hand on her waist, in that familiar way that had once cut me to the quick but now felt strangely distant, like watching actors in a play I had once starred in. Jessica scanned the restaurant, a habit she always had when entering a room, wanting to see who was there and who might see her. Her eyes swept past our table, then snapped back, widening as she recognized me. The smile she had worn upon entering froze, then faltered. I saw her grip on Brad tighten, watched her whisper something to him that made him look our way with obvious discomfort. The hostess led them to a table, unfortunately within view of ours. Jessica kept glancing over her attention, clearly divided between her date and my table. Brad seemed increasingly annoyed, checking his phone repeatedly and trying to engage her in conversation. Eliza, perceptive as always, noticed my distraction and quietly asked if everything was okay. I debated saying nothing, pretending I had not noticed my ex-wife, but our relationship was built on honesty. That woman at the corner table is Jessica, my ex-wife, I explained softly. And that is Brad, the man she left me for. Eliza did not turn to stare or make a scene. Instead, she reached across the table and squeezed my hand, asking the only question that mattered. Do you want to leave? I considered it briefly the old instinct to avoid conflict rising up. But looking at Eliza, feeling the genuine support in her touch, I realized I had nothing to run from anymore. No, I replied. I am exactly where I want to be with exactly who I want to be with. We continued our meal, though I would be lying if I said I was not aware of Jessica watching us. When Eliza made me laugh with a story about her kindergartners, I saw Jessica stiffen. When I reached across the table to brush a strand of hair from Eliza's face, I noticed Jessica drain her wine glass and signal for another. Part of me, a small part I am not proud of, felt a glimmer of satisfaction seeing her discomfort. But mostly I was surprised by how little her presence affected me. The pain that had once been all-consuming had dulled to a distant memory. As we finished our tiramisu, Jessica's behavior grew increasingly erratic. She was on her third glass of wine, her voice carrying across the restaurant as she tried too hard to laugh at something Brad said. When she stood abruptly, ostensibly to visit the restroom, I had a sinking feeling about what would happen next. Sure enough, her path took her directly past our table. Sherman, what a surprise. Her voice was too loud, her smile too wide. How are you? I stood politely, years of ingrained manners impossible to ignore. I am well, Jessica. Very well, actually. This is Eliza. Jessica turned to Eliza, giving her a once-over that was meant to be subtle but was anything but. Oh, how nice. What was your name again, Elizabeth Eliza? Eliza corrected with a kind smile that made me fall a little more in love with her. It is nice to meet you. Jessica nodded dismissively before turning back to me. You look different. Have you lost weight? I have been taking better care of myself, I answered simply. Jessica laughed, a sound I once loved but now found grating. Always so modest. You were working out when we were together too, but now you actually have results. And what is this? She reached out to touch my new watch, her fingers lingering on my wrist. Promotion at work. Something like that, I said, gently pulling my arm away. How are things with you and Brad? The question was innocent enough, but Jessica's expression tightened. Oh, we are absolutely wonderful. Brad just got a major account at work. He is practically running the marketing department now. I noticed she did not mention her own career, which had once been so important to her. That is great, I said sincerely. I am glad you are happy. Something in my genuine tone seemed to irritate her further. Jessica glanced back at Brad, who was openly staring at his phone now, then leaned closer to me. So, Eliza, what do you do? Let me guess, something in technology like Sherman. I teach elementary school, actually, Eliza replied. First grade this year. Jessica could not hide her surprise or the slight curl of her lip. Oh, how sweet. I could never work with children all day. My job in corporate marketing is just so fast-paced and intellectually stimulating, you know. Each word was chosen as a weapon designed to establish her superiority. I felt a flare of protectiveness toward Eliza, but before I could speak, Eliza responded with perfect composure. I find helping shape young minds incredibly fulfilling. Every day brings new challenges and rewards. But I am sure marketing has its excitement too. Jessica's smile turned brittle as her attempt to intimidate Eliza failed completely. She took another large sip of the wine she had brought with her from her table. You two must be fairly new. How did you meet? The implication was clear. This must be casual, a rebound. Before either of us could answer, Jessica continued, swaying slightly. Sherman was always so serious in our marriage, so focused on work and saving for the future. I always told him he needed to live a little, did not I? Sherman. She laughed again, louder. I swear sometimes I felt like I was married to an accountant instead of a man. Brad finally seemed to notice his date had been gone too long and approached our table, his discomfort evident. Jessica, our main course has just arrived, he said, placing a hand on her shoulder. Jessica shrugged him off. I am just catching up with my ex-husband and his friend. You remember Sherman, right? Brad nodded uncomfortably in my direction, clearly wanting to escape. Nice to see you again. Jessica, we should get back. Jessica ignored him, her attention fixed on Eliza now. Sherman needs someone who can keep up with him intellectually, you know. He gets bored easily. That lie was so blatant that I almost laughed. I had never once indicated boredom during our marriage, had never sought the constant stimulation that Jessica craved. Eliza glanced at me, a question in her eyes. I gave a small shake of my head, silently communicating that none of what Jessica said was true. Actually, Jessica continued her words, slurring slightly. Sherman and I were discussing reconciliation before our divorce was even final. He called me begging for another chance. That crossed a line. Jessica, that is enough, I said firmly. You are creating fiction, and it is not appropriate. Fiction, Jessica's voice rose, drawing attention from nearby tables. Tell her, Sherman. Tell her how you cried on the phone, saying you would never find anyone like me. Sherman never called you. Brad interrupted, surprising all of us. You were the one who kept checking his social media, wondering if he was dating anyone new. The look Jessica gave Brad could have frozen fire. The restaurant had grown quiet, other diners now openly watching the drama unfolding. Shut up, Brad, she hissed. No, I am tired of this. Brad continued, apparently having reached his limit. For months, all I have heard is Sherman this and Sherman that. You compare everything I do to him, and now we finally run into him and you make a complete fool of yourself. And me. Jessica's face flushed deep red. She turned back to me, desperation, replacing the earlier malice. He is lying. I never talked about you. I never thought about you. I was so much happier with Brad. Brad laughed bitterly. Is that why I found you crying over your wedding album last week? Jessica gasped, then grabbed her wine glass and threw the remaining contents directly at Brad, missing him but splashing a nearby diner. Brad, you bastard, she screamed, all pretense of composure gone. You promised you would never mention that. The restaurant manager appeared, his expression grave. I am going to have to ask you to leave, he told Jessica and Brad. We cannot have this kind of disturbance. Jessica looked wildly around, suddenly aware of the spectacle she had created. Her eyes found mine again, filled with a mixture of rage and humiliation. This is your fault, she spat. You did this on purpose, bringing her here, flaunting your new relationship. I stood up straight, looking directly into the eyes of the woman I had once pledged my life to. Jessica, I said quietly, but firmly, I had no idea you would be here tonight. But I want you to know something. I have forgiven you. I genuinely hope you find happiness, whatever that looks like for you. Her mouth opened, then closed, no words emerging. The simple truth had disarmed her completely. Brad took her arm, and this time she did not resist as he led her toward the exit. The restaurant gradually returned to its normal volume of conversation. The entertainment concluded. I sat back down, slightly shaky from the confrontation. Eliza reached for my hands across the table. I am so proud of you, she whispered. That took incredible strength. In that moment, looking at Eliza's sincere expression, I realized a profound truth. I was free. The anger, the hurt, the sense of inadequacy that had plagued me since discovering Jessica's betrayal. It had all finally loosened its grip on my heart. I had faced my past and emerged unscathed, stronger even. 2 weeks after that eventful dinner, Patrick called with news he had heard through mutual connections. Jessica and Brad had broken up. Apparently, she had found text messages between Brad and his executive assistant messages with the same secretive tone that had once characterized her communications with him when we were married. The irony was not lost on me, but instead of satisfaction, I felt a strange sense of closure. The cycle had completed itself, and I was no longer part of it. My relationship with Eliza continued to deepen. We took things at our own pace, building something authentic and strong. 6 months after the restaurant incident, she moved into my house, bringing with her colorful artwork from her students, an impressive book collection that complemented my own, and a warmth that transformed the space from a reminder of loss into a home again. Sometimes when I look back at the man I was during my marriage and immediately after my divorce, I barely recognize him. The pain that once defined me became the catalyst for growth I might never have experienced otherwise. I learned that happiness is not something another person gives you, but something you cultivate within yourself and then share with someone worthy. If you have experienced betrayal like I did, or if you are currently in the depths of that pain, let me tell you what I wish someone had told me. This will not break you unless you allow it to. Your worth was never determined by the person who failed to see it. And sometimes the greatest revenge is not plotting payback, but simply living your best life. The wound that once defined me became the opening through which true happiness finally found its way in. I would love to hear about your experiences in the comments below. Have you ever had an unexpected encounter with an ex that taught you something about yourself? How did you rebuild after a relationship ended painfully? Please hit that like button if this story resonated with you, and subscribe to hear more real-life stories of overcoming challenges. Share this video with someone who might be struggling to see the light at the end of their own tunnel. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes the most beautiful chapters of your life come after the most difficult ones. You are stronger than you know.